Welcome, and thanks for joining us for the final episode of Co-Girls on Air Season 1, a podcast exploring all things technology, female leadership, careers, education, and topics within the nonprofit sector. On this episode, we interviewed Natalie Lao, who is the CEO and Executive Director at the App Inventor Foundation. Join Michaela and Natalie to hear more of her story.
Welcome, Natalie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, it's great to be here.
Do you think you could start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your background and your current position?
Yeah, so I'm Natalie Lao. I'm currently the Executive Director of App Inventor Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. That just means it's like a government IRS accredited nonprofit. And our goal is to empower anyone to be able to make apps that can help their communities or their families in some way. And a little bit about how I got there. I was a student at MIT for about 10 years. I did my undergraduate, my master's, and my PhD at MIT. And there was a really cool project at MIT called the MIT App Inventor Lab, which made this platform that allowed anyone to build apps. So once I finished my PhD, I decided to help take this to the next level and work with my professor and my lab mates to make this nonprofit. And then slightly on the side, I also do some work with the United Nations. I co-authored a framework on like the UN's guidelines for K through 12 AI education last year. So yeah, we do like a lot of outreach through App Inventor, and then also some like policy and AI education, like thought leadership and guidance as well.
Wow, that's incredible. Do you think you could take us through some of the most pivotal moments in your both schooling and your career that led you to where you are now today?
Yeah, I think like from the very beginning, so I was born in Thailand, which is a country in Southeast Asia, very like jungly. And then we moved to China for a bit, and then Canada, and then Tennessee, and then Ohio. And this was all before elementary school.
Oh
So
my
I like
goodness.
lived in a lot of, yeah, it was a lot of different like countries and states. And I think like that was really impactful in my life because I got to see so many different like cultures and people. And it was like really fascinating because obviously like Thailand and Tennessee, very different.
Yeah.
But when you experience those cultures, you realize like people there just, they all care about the same thing. They want the best for their families and they want like good things for their community. And I think at the center of that was like education and opportunities. So I feel like in those areas, like a lot of students wanted to like go to school to learn more about the world, but also like seek out what they can do in the future and like apply themselves to. And I think I really saw like the power of education to take people forward. So that was like before I started MIT.
Right.
And then in high school, I was in Ohio. And I had a really amazing high school science research program. So I still remember my teacher. Her name is Mrs. Brennan, and she led this like lunchtime summer research mini class that was completely optional. And then all of us like nerds went and like did a research project. So she really guided us through like the research process, and I got really into coding. So like when I got to MIT, I decided to major in computer science, and that combined with my interest in education and how I saw how impactful it was for people all over the world, I decided to do some research with the App Inventor Lab. So I guess that was like the first kind of foray.
Yeah. Wonderful. So as the CEO and Executive Director of the App Inventor Foundation, you're leading a global nonprofit. What has been the most rewarding aspect of that and working in such a diverse worldwide community?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what I mentioned before about like meeting the students and the teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So we have two major, I guess, branches of our work. One is programs for students, and that includes our global AI hackathon and our regional appathons. So kind of these events to get students to think about a problem they really care about and build an app to solve it, and also like share with other students so that you don't feel like it's just you who is working on this type of thing or like learning how to code.
Great.
You're like connecting with students all over the world who you might not realize you have these like things in common with. So that's always really cool. And then the teachers are just so inspiring. I think especially in the US, they're so under-resourced. but they care so much about the work they do. And we do a lot of teacher training, and they always like come with amazing ideas. And I learn so much about like what's working in the classroom. So I'm coming from like the MIT perspective of here's the most cutting edge thing.
Hmm.
And a lot of what I try to do is how do we adapt that to work in a K through 12 classroom? And I have these ideas, and then the teachers come and they just like bring these great perspectives on what can work and what doesn't work. So I guess like short answer is interacting with the people. I hope that's
Yeah.
not like too easy. Yeah.
No. Well, I love the community aspect of it, connecting all over the world with a group, and then also working for the next generation. Okay, so App Inventor, it's an incredible platform that teaches these kids how to do coding. What inspired you to become part of the project? Because you said you had the opportunity at MIT, but what made you want to do it?
Yeah, so again, I majored in computer science, and I was learning Python, which is a very like great text-based
Yeah.
programming language, and I was doing fine in my classes and everything. And then in my junior year of college, there was this thing called MISTY at MIT, and it's an international kind of student exchange program. And I was sent to Barcelona, Spain, to teach high school computer science for a month. And when
Wow.
I got there, yeah, it was really fun. I spoke a little bit of Spanish and it got me by okay, but a lot of the students in that school spoke English,
Oh,
so
that's good. Yeah.
yeah. But over there, so I was in the classroom and I was just like, I'm here for a month. It's not a lot of time. I want to do something like really interesting and engaging. And when I got there, the students were using like Excel and doing like programming through Excel blocks. And I was like, oh, I'm sure we can do like something a little bit more hands-on. So at that point, I actually hadn't heard of App Inventor. I was just Googling like what are some cool hands-on programming things I can do with students that's like pretty beginner level, but also fun.
Mhm.
And I found Scratch, which is also an MIT platform, and App Inventor. And since this was high school, I was like, oh, they're all on their phones. Maybe we can do App Inventor so that it's something connected to what they are already using. So I started teaching App Inventor there. And I think the first 2 weeks, we had the students make a game. It was like mini golf, but because it was Barcelona, I was like, oh, mini football, which is soccer, since soccer was like very big there. And then there was like a recipe app where you can load all the steps in a recipe and you can just like tap the screen to go to the next step. So very basic, but the students, I could just tell like a switch lit up in their head and they were like, oh my gosh, I made a thing that I'm using on my actual phone. It's like Facebook or like other apps on my phone, but I made it. And
Mhm.
it kind of like turned that switch in their brain from I'm just a consumer of these technologies to I can also be a creator of these technologies. And I just thought like it was amazing how easy App Inventor was for them to learn and use.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and the instant gratification is a huge piece of it too, because you can do like 10 minutes of coding and then have a working app right away, which is especially
Yeah,
great with younger
exactly.
kids too.
Yeah, like I'm sure you've like taken some coding classes, but I remember when I was first starting learning how to code, you do the like print line hello world
Yeah.
and it just like says hello world and I'm like that's kind of cute, but also like I
Thanks.
could do that in Microsoft Word or
Right.
Google Docs, right? So something that's a little bit more like personal
Hmm.
and useful was really nice. And I guess like another thing I always say is there's also this coding exercise that's like, can you code the first n digits of the Fibonacci sequence or series? And that's a very like common
Yeah.
programming algorithmic task, but it's not particularly interesting. So I feel like if I wasn't like a super mathy, like, ah, yes, I love algorithms, I would be kind of turned off by it.
Yeah.
And I think like, with App Inventor, like anyone, even if you don't consider yourself a STEM person, could get into it and learn it and then maybe develop their confidence and their ability to like do more STEMmy types of things.
Showing them it's not all just math. So I
Yeah.
also want to can we touch on your time at Apple and Google too?
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah, so can you just kind of give us a brief explanation of what that was like?
Yeah, so I guess when I first went to college, I had this idea in my head that I would graduate in 4 years with my bachelor's in computer science. I'd find a nice tech job, hopefully at like a stable company, and just be done with life, I guess. There wasn't much of a plan
That was
there.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. So I was like trying to get internships at these like companies to get experience. And my first summer, so at MIT, there's this culture of like career fair. So in the fall, a lot of companies come to campus for a 2-day big celebration and they hire interns or try to interview a lot of people. So that happens every fall, and they interview people like usually for summer internships, is the context.
Mm.
So my freshman year, I was trying to get an internship. I dropped off my resume at like 200 places. I got one interview and I failed, and I was like,
Oh,
oh no. Yeah, it was very sad, but it's okay. My sophomore year, I did the same thing, and I did get an internship that year. I learned a bit more, and I was a IT leadership program intern at General Electric. So that
oh,
was actually my first like formal internship, and I worked with a lot of wind turbine development and planning and manufacturing for that, and that was awesome. And then my junior year, I got the Google Associate Product Manager internship. So I went there and we developed a design for a product that back then was called the On Hub. It was a Wi-Fi router
oh,
that Google was making. And it was in like Google X. I don't know if they have that anymore, but it was their like secret projects division that wasn't public.
hmm,
So that was really cool. And I got to kind of get a feel for what it means to ship software and hardware
yeah.
in a very professional setting. So I got to work with like UI, UX designers, security experts, lawyers, um, tech professionals as well. And then after that, I did the same thing at Apple, but with iPhones instead of routers.
Right.
And then I did that for 2 years. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So after working in both big industry and then in the nonprofit sector, what are some of the key differences, especially when it comes to leadership, that you noticed?
I think so. The nonprofit sector, I would still consider myself like kind of green and new in the sector. So at Inventor, we have a lot of impact. Like we reach 24 million people
Hmm.
across the world, but our team itself is really small. We're just like 15 people from across like MIT and the App Inventor Foundation.
Wow.
So really small, tight-knit team. Like everyone knows everyone else. It's really easy to like communicate and get things done quickly and iterate quickly. At large companies in general, not just like Apple and Google and GE, just there's hundreds of people, sometimes thousands, and just things take longer because there are more people who need to approve. And obviously, like there's a standard of if we mess up the iPhone screen such that it cracks when you drop it from 50 meters, then, or that's pretty high, but like however high you drop it, they have a standard, like it's $1 billion lost or something like that.
Oh,
So
wow.
the yeah, the standards are much more strict, I think, in industry,
Hmm,
and it's a lot more rigid structure.
hmm,
But I think that's the case between a lot of like big companies versus small companies as well.
yeah. So as a woman in tech, what have been some of your biggest challenges that you've faced, and how have you kind of navigated them?
Yeah, I think so. Frankly, like MIT was a really amazing place to be a woman in tech. I felt extremely supported.
Hmm,
They also make a very like I don't know if it's conscious effort or just it happened that way, but the class is nearly 50-50, like men and women. So
wow.
I didn't really feel like super left out. But in high school and middle school, it was definitely unusual. I was one of, I think, two women in my AP computer science class, and it was all like boys otherwise. So it was definitely a little bit like, hmm, like everyone else has slightly different communication styles or
Hmm.
interests or working styles. Like maybe like I was more interested in like making cute drawings during the free period of computer science, but everyone else was making games, or it was just a little bit of a like community
Hmm.
mismatch, I think. But once I got to college, I definitely felt like I could find people who had similar interests to me. It wasn't even like split along gender lines. It was just meeting a lot more diverse people, I
Yeah.
think helped. Mhm.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to switch gears now into the AI side of things. How do you see the role of AI shaping the future of education, particularly in, underserved or remote communities?
That's a really good question. So I was just on a UN webinar 2 weeks ago about this. And I think like starting with the problem a little bit further back in time. When the internet first became a thing, people were really concerned about it, like being the end of learning. And if students can just Google the answer, like, will they ever learn? And obviously that hasn't become a problem.
Right.
And with AI, I think there's like a similar concern. But in really remote areas, I think a big issue we see is that there's kind of a poverty gap that's widening with technology. So right now in a lot of developing countries, including like a lot of the countries in the African continent, half of the schools don't even have access to electricity. So if they don't have electricity, they usually don't have Wi-Fi or cellular connection, and just a lot of the kids in the schools aren't even like able to use the internet. So just that gap is widening, and it's very concerning. But with AI, I think it's just similar to other technologies. We need to make a concerted effort to like invest in these regions and give people access to the resources that they need to create these opportunities for themselves and their economies. The reason I think App Inventor is really helpful and powerful here is we work with families like in these remote regions where the entire family only has one digital device and it's always a smartphone. So it'll be like a farming community and like the dad needs a smartphone to like make sales or look at what the prices are and communicate with the people that they're selling to. And that tool becomes something that the rest of the family can use to learn and develop these new like skills and opportunities for themselves. So I guess with AI in remote areas, I'm more concerned about how do we get these tools in the hands of people and how do we like make them small and cheap so that they can afford it.
Be widespread.
Yeah.
So what do you think are the most ethical considerations when integrating AI into educational systems?
I think like ethics is pretty community dependent. So there are these good ethical foundations that the UN has laid out. So they have 4 ethical values and 10 ethical principles. Some of them are like transparency, privacy and security, non-discrimination, like all very good stuff. But I think depending on which community you're talking about with regards to education, they have different environmental factors or contexts that they need to consider. So I think the most important thing is to like get together the teachers and the students and the parents and other stakeholders in that community and figure out like, what are you trying to do with education? What are these goals that everyone can agree on? Is it like we want to train people for jobs because that's a really big concern in this community? Is it we want to help people like learn about the world and discover their interests? Is it something else? Like what are the top priorities? And then we adapt our usage of AI towards those. So I don't think there's a one size fits all solution. If we can get like key stakeholders educated in AI and then get in a room and talking and aligning on these like foundations that are AI independent, I think that's like the best process to go about it.
Yeah, I agree. So I kind of want to jump back into your various roles. From your time in your internships and then later in the nonprofit sector, how did these experiences prepare you for your entrepreneurial ventures?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, like I'm in my 30s now, looking back in my teens and 20s, like the biggest thing that I've seen myself develop as a person is like just confidence. I feel like you hear this stat a lot, like women undervalue what they're able to do and under communicate like their skills, whereas men tend to over communicate. And I didn't really think that way, but I've actually, once I've started working in the startup space and like professionally, I've realized I do tend to give myself less credit than I deserve. And I think realizing that and getting a lot of like data points through my personal experiences, I'm able to kind of say like, I am capable. I am able to do these things. I shouldn't present myself as someone who like, oh, I'm not sure if I can. So I guess like that's the biggest change I've noticed, and that's really helped me just even have the confidence to say I'm going to start a nonprofit and be the leader of that. It sounds really small and cheesy, but it's definitely a real thing that I've experienced after like going through all of these different internships and working experiences.
No, I think that's incredible. I think confidence definitely is a key factor. So kind of wrapping up here, How do you maintain a work-life balance while juggling multiple roles in such high-impact organizations?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think in my organization, at least, like the people I work with are amazing and they're very supportive, and that's the biggest difference. I think it really matters that the community that you're working in cares about work-life balance and it's a shared value for everyone. So again, I was sick and out this week with a cold, and everyone was just like, oh, we'll try to take as much work off of your plate as we can. And when they need to head out for vacation or if they're sick, like there's this kind of shared sense of we'll help each other out. And it's not like, oh, we're upset or it's a problem that you're letting everyone down. I also think it really helps that at a nonprofit, usually the people that you're working with, they're here for the mission and they all really, really care about the mission. So it's not just like we're punching in a card to get our paycheck. Everyone's really here to like help make a difference in this stated problem. And that makes everyone just like, we do really good work. And I think that also helps with like, when we need to take a break, we can take it because we're working so hard and like being innovative the rest of the time.
You have that community with a shared passion.
Yeah.
So finally, do you have any, what are skills or mindsets, aside from confidence, that you think would be helpful for young women? Or do you have any final suggestions for them who want to go into the STEM field?
Yeah, I think so I guess there's like two different suggestion buckets I have. The first is if you're already like very interested in STEM and you want to do data science or coding or something else, I think you'll need coding in anything related to STEM basically. When you're learning computer science, I would focus on like learning debugging skills and systems thinking skills. So I think those are two skills that aren't really taught, or they are taught, but they're not really the focus of introductory computer science classes in formal education. And with the rise of AI, like I do a lot of coding with ChatGPT and Copilot and code generation tools. And a lot of what I'm doing is debugging. So you need those skills and knowledge, like data structures and, like threading and whatnot that is taught, but you also need to start like being a good debugger and knowing how to put these systems together that like AI is generating, because that's what code writing is going to be in the future. So I guess for the computer science minded, I guess like learn how to be a good debugger and a systems thinker. And then for anyone, just general advice, I feel like persistence and resilience is a really important skill. I think especially with like this generation, there's a lot of instant gratification, as you said earlier. And I think there can be the sense of like, oh, if I can't get it right away, I'm not used to that feeling and I don't know what to do with that. So I guess like learning how to deal with problems in a like long-term way. So if I get stuck, like what do I do? Like I need to not give up. Here are people I can ask for help. Here are things I can like research on my own. And like developing those like lifelong learning and resilient skills.
Perseverance. Well, thank you so much. This was incredibly informative and inspiring, and we really appreciate you coming on Code Girls on Air today.
Thank you so much.
That's a wrap on Season 1 of Code Girls on Air. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, shared, and supported us along the way. A huge shout out to our amazing guests. Your stories, insights, and time meant the world to us. We can't wait for you to join us again for Season 2, launching August 2025, with our incredible host, Emma Anderson. I forgot. I was going to do bloopers at the end. Because I have bloopers from the entire...
Yeah. Does it look too much like I'm looking down?
Yeah.
It does?
Yeah.
What if I look right there? How does that look?
It looks like you're looking at the camera.
Up here?
Yeah.
Like this? Yeah. I'm looking at the camera.
Yeah.
Well, then let's just throw it on the teleprompter. Why did we get all the boxes? All things technology. I got laughy thinking about when I could breathe. Can't you reuse this first part? Like if I'm talking like this, does that look stupid?
You sound angry. I sound angry?
During the week of August 29th through September 5th. What is that? Noise I just heard. Look how cute we are. Friends.
You gotta kind of like tilt toward me so that you can see your arm thing.
I'll just like casually just jazz hands. That looks so weird. Okay. A podcast exploring all... Can I restart? A podcast exploring all things technology, female leadership, careers, technology, education, and topics within the nonprofit sector. I said technology twice. Start. I don't like doing this as about.
Well, all I want to know, it really is. Okay, can you email me that? Because I think it's a new technique. Yeah.
I cannot. Why is this mic stand so much worse than yours?
This is my baby, so I take care of her. And she doesn't
super
squeak.
squeaky.
Yes, but if I don't touch her, she's fine.
I'll try again. I feel like it sounds like muffled. Hello, check. Okay, these ones are fine. It's the port? It's the port. Or it's the connector pieces.
Whatever. Go. You have the good ones.
Yeah.
This is the top. This is the. No, it's fine. I'm tired of standing here.
Sorry.
I was gonna do that. We look like newscasters. Teenage newscasters.
I don't know. Should I look at you when you're talking?
Well, that's
So that
not a
we're
bad
just
idea. And then I
staring
can
into the abyss.
Yes, and then I'll turn to you when you talk.
Okay.
Code Girls United needs your help to win a $10,000 incentive package.
I know it's so much harder when someone's looking at you. It's weird.
It's too much. I can't do it. I can try it again,
Just
but
feel me staring into your soul. Do you not want me to look at you? Okay.
please don't. You can try it again, but it just makes me feel comfy.
Yeah.
Okay, just one more time. I couldn't handle you.
So do you want me to look at you or no?
No.
Okay.
Okay, ready? And self-efficacy necessary to take advantage of opportunities to better their futures. Was that weird? Efficacy. Do we have to do it again? I know, it's gross. That one was good.
Okay.
That was good.
I feel like I was making a weird face at the beginning, but we'll see. I'll check.
Welcome and thanks for joining.
Thanks for it.
Sorry.
I think
You're not gonna be able to talk.
I hope your voice.
We for real.
You mocking me. Thanks for doing.
I forgot that we did that.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's the extent of our.
Montana. Talk about. Sorry, I just thought of that.
Oh, you're right. Okay, we'll talk about that later.
Sorry,
Also,
Isabel. You're gonna have a great
as
time
we're-
editing.
Careers, educations.
You're doing so well.
I know. How hard is it to read the list?
Welcome and thanks for joining us for the final episode of Code Girls on Air Season 1. No, I don't like that. I forgot I was saying Season 1. That's a wrap on Season 1 of Code Girls on Air.
Dang it, sorry.
A huge shout. Dang it. Your stories, insight.
You're so good. It's like.
You tuned in, shared, and so this isn't hard.
Want to do it again?
No.
Okay.
Are we recording?
Yeah.
Oh.